Well, in case you missed it, Paul Keating has accused Labor of making its worst decision in a century by signing a $368 billion AUKUS agreement. The former Prime Minister and Labor luminary also denied that there's any imminent threat from China. There's been plenty of reaction to this, but we can't get enough. So let's bring in the Assistant Trade Minister, Tim Ayres. He joins me here at the desk. Good to see you.
Yes.
As that was unfolding yesterday, what did you think?
Well, I think the idea that Australia could undertake the biggest military procurement in our history, replacing the Collins-class submarines without there being any debate in the community or any debate in particular in the Labor Party, I think that's an unrealistic expectation.
So you welcome Paul Keating's intervention?
Well, I just think there's going to be debate. There's going to be criticism. When Anthony Albanese first learnt of the AUKUS submarine and broader AUKUS arrangements and convened the caucus together, he set out the Labor position and it included, an important commitment that the then government made that this arrangement would not be in breach of our NPT obligations, our disarmament obligations. Now that commitment's been met unequivocally, but it's correct for people to be sceptical, to ask questions, to engage. Like, there is going to be a lot of community debate about this. The last of these submarines will be delivered in 2050. We are replacing 6 diesel submarines that are coming to the end of their lifespan over the course of the next, over the course of the 2030s, with 8 new submarines. The plan deals with the capability gap, the gap that had emerged over the last 10 years. When does the new submarine program deliver its first submarine?
Well, this wasn't Keating's problem, really. He was talking about the optics of doing this big, big song and dance with the US. What does it say about where Labor or how Labor values Paul Keating when he wrote to the Prime Minister about this? And apparently he was ignored by Anthony Albanese. Does that say it all?
Can I say maybe 2 things? I mean, the first thing is our responsibility in government now is to see the world as it is. Actually as it is, not how it looked in 1995 through the prism of people who'd been engaged in politics in the last half of the 20th century. We have to view the world as it is. This is a sensible, cautious, it is the right judgment. There are decisions that governments make, Labor governments make, that make people from previous generations uncomfortable. We have to do this with a national interest in mind, with the right values. And we have to protect the national interest in that process. And
the problem for the Labor Party is that Paul Keating is such a big figure. He's a luminary. He talks still to many of the current leadership in Cabinet. So where does he fit in the Labor story as a values proposition? Is he an old man ranting at the press club? Is he just being dismissed by every single, current sitting Labor politician? Or is some of his comments being taken seriously?
I think Richard Marles was right last night. We in the Labor movement and the Labor Party, of course, absolutely respect the legacy of the Hawke and Keating governments. You won't hear a word of criticism of Keating or any of those other luminaries who led that, period of government. But our responsibility is to work carefully through the issues now.
So he has no...
It's the Labor Party, right?
His input is not valid view now.
Yeah,
are you saying that?
Well, it's not a newsflash, really, that there are differences of views.
Well, who shares Keating's view, though?
Well, there is, I think, a very strong understanding across the Federal Parliamentary Labor Party that this is the right approach. We have...
So no one really shares Keating's view?
We supported the proposition in the lead up to the last election. Richard Marles, the Defence Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, and other ministers have been engaged in this ominously titled Critical Path program, trying to make sure that we're matching both the defence requirements but our workforce requirements, our industrial capability, and we're getting all that right. It's been a very careful exercise. It's been done well, and the result is there for all to see.
We spoke to Di Lee before. She's independent member for Fowler. She actually agreed with Keating on a lot of the points that he made, but also quickly pivoted to this cost of living issue. How do you say to the Australian public or explain why you're spending $368 billion, it's about $12 billion a year to 2050, when people are starting to put food on the table, pay their mortgages? How are you going to pay for that?
Well, it's going to
hurt them.
Well, it's going to have to be budgeted for. It comes at some expense, and the rest of the force.
Expense to whom?
Well, it's
not just the budget. Taxpayers pay. So how are they going to pay for it?
Well, we have a series of competing responsibilities here, and we have to get the balance right. There is that program. There is the force structure review, which will require some re-evaluation and recommitment of defence spending priorities. There's what the government does more broadly. In terms of Commonwealth expenditure, but there's also keeping cost of living down by being fiscally prudent, by building Australian industrial capability and productivity.
Yep.
There's a series of levers that we have to engage with and get right. What you could say about this government pretty confidently is we're focused on all of those issues and determined to act in the national interest, not in a sort of hyper-partisan sort of way like the last government did.
Well, to be fair, the last government is pretty bang on with this. Bit of an issue around the cost, but it's largely bipartisan. Just quickly, gas. Yeah. It is a problem. There is a shortage on the East Coast. Big providers actually have uncontracted gas, but they're not supplying it to the local or not committing it to the local market yet. What are you going to do about that?
Well, we've just come from the end of last year where we moved, with the cooperation of the states, to put price caps on coal and gas. Earlier, we dealt with the supply questions for this year and next year.
The shortage.
I can tell you the government will be watching this very closely. So I'd just say we have acted. We've acted with real determination and in a way that I'm very confident has had a very positive effect on prices and supply. We will continue to focus on these issues. It's absolutely in the interest of households, but also for our manufacturing businesses that we make sure...
Can you force these companies to commit that uncontracted gas to the East Coast market?
Well, the ACCC's got some very strong tools here, and we're also reviewing the mechanism.
Is that yes?
This government will do what is required, and we've shown our determination and our capacity to do it. We'll do what is required on supply and price.
So you're trying to use carrot, but you might need a stick.
I'll just say we'll do what's required, Laura. I'm not engaged right now in this question, so we will have to continue to carefully monitor this, and the government has been doing that all the way through.
All right, we'll keep a close eye on that. Good to see you.
Good on you, Laura.